G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on animating the body of a character who also has a head with facial animation. We're going to mix the two so that he's talking while we animate a tweened run on the character. Now this is part of a bit of a set, so there are two other tutorials. The first one I did was on creating the face ready for animation in all its layers and all that. And then the second tutorial was on animating the face. This tutorial will be covering animating the body and then mixing the facial animation that we've got here in this head. You can see when I play it here.
I like that pic. You looking thick, baby.
And then including that in the body animation. So the first thing I want to do is set up the body ready for animating. So I've got this reference here that I've done. It's a very sketchy sort of thing for an animatic that I created. And I'm going to be drawing all the layers first before I mimic this motion. So you see I've got the proportions already laid out in front of me, and that makes things much easier because now I can add a bunch of layers. This is just a graphic and it will repeat, okay? Now I won't be drawing the head because I've already got the head, obviously, but I'm going to lock this reference layer. I'm going to zoom in a little bit and I'm just going to select my brush and I'm going to start off with the torso. I generally do start off with the torso just because it's the core of the body and everything kind of extends from outside of that. So on a middle one of these layers, I'm going to select here and I'm just going to hit wireframe so that it's not too loud, so when I draw on top of it I can see everything clearly. And I'm just going to start using these reference lines that I've set up as a guide and draw the body. So now that I've drawn the torso, I'm just going to select the whole torso and hit F8. And I'm going to convert it to a graphic symbol and I'll call it douche torso. Hit enter and here I have this torso that I can use. Now unlike the head, which I had created lots of different frames within the graphic symbols, I'm not going to be doing that. I'm just going to create the core graphic symbols and then I'll use them as they are. So I can use this, but I want to set the pivot to here around the hips, and that means when I rotate it the pivot will be around that point. Okay, so that's going to come in useful later. For now I'm done with the torso. I'm just going to lock it and wireframe it, and then on the layer above it I'm going to start drawing the shoulder and arm at the front of the body. So simple as before. Once you get used to the drawing tools, the process is a little faster, and I've been doing this and setting up animation rigs for quite a long time now, so it tends to happen a little faster for me than it may for some of you who are learning Flash, kind of getting used to the ropes. Anyways, one thing that I had mentioned in the previous tutorial that I'll mention again because it's a very useful thing to keep in mind is that with the brush tool selected, I usually have paint behind selected, where instead of when I paint on top, on paint in front it shows in front, on paint behind I can scribble and it shows behind the lines, and that enables me to create these little sections that I can paint in, and it's useful to create some shading without going over the line work you've already created. So there you go, I have finished the front arm. What I like to do after I draw it in position, I like to rotate it so that it's on a straight angle and reselect it. Notice how the box is much more conformed with the shape of the object. And I'm going to hit F8 and I'll call it douche up, front up arm. Then I'm going to move the pivot to the middle of the shoulder and I'll move it back over here. And that way it moves around the body a little more naturally in line with where the shoulder would actually move. There you go. So I'm quite happy with that. Now I can lock and wireframe that, go to a layer above and do the same thing with the next layer and draw the forearm. So once I've done the line work, same thing as before, going through, adding the shading, adding the highlights, select it, make it a conforming sort of angle, hit F8 and I'll call it douche for front forearm. Front forearm, change the pivot point, and move it into place. And that is the process. And I'm going to do that again, so I'm going to create another layer on top of it, do the hand, and then after I do this front arm, I'm going to do the same for the back arm, but on the layers behind the torso, and there are going to be 3 layers, so there'll be the shoulder and bicep, then there'll be the forearm, and then there'll be the hand, all on separate layers. Then I'll do the same thing again with the legs, with one leg in front of the torso and one leg behind. So here I have my finished layers and parts of the body. I'm just going to go through layer by layer and show you what I've got. The first thing I drew was the torso. Then on top of that, I have a leg. This needs to appear in front of the torso for obvious reasons, because it's the front leg. Then we have the shoulder, forearm, and hand, and they are all on separate layers. Beneath this we have 3 layers which make up the back arm, and then we have the back leg. So all in all, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 layers that make up this body that we're going to be animating, and we're going to be animating it right now. And we're going to be using this back thing for reference. So if I wireframe everything except for the back layer, you can see a sketch there of this dude's body. Okay, so we notice that first of all, the pose that he starts off in is this one, and then the middle pose is the opposite. Is the front arm coming forward. Look at this. So I'm just going to move everything forward. The front leg going back, and the back leg going at the front. And then we don't want too much motion in the arm at the back because the hand needs to stay up near the head. It's a phone, after all, so he needs to be on the phone call because whatever he's saying on the phone. So there we have our second position. Okay, so I'm going to lock this reference layer and I'm going to start animating. To do so, I'm going to create a copy of these first sets of keyframes. So I'll select all the keyframes, hit Control-Alt-C to copy all the frames, and then back here at frame 20, Control-Alt-V. Now I know it goes over the timeline, but that's okay because we're going to remove these later. For now I'm going to select all of this and hit right click, create a classic tween, and that creates an automatic motion between all of these keyframes. So we already have a lot of the motion. The problem is it's not very good motion. So if I hide my back reference, he's just kind of flopping from one position into the next. So what I want to do now is in this middle bit, I'm going to select all of this and push it down and forward like this. And I'm going to do the same thing here in this middle bit, hit F6, create a duplicate keyframe, push it down and forward. Now when I play, we start to get a bit of a bounce. Now I can accentuate this by making the bounce a bit lower. And already that makes a huge amount of difference, okay? Now the next thing I want to do is start creating variances in the legs. So I want the front leg to not go all the way back. I want it to come forward first, here in this middle keyframe. So come forward, and that back leg can stay back. Okay, because there's got to be reaching forward to land on that foot. Then next, in this middle frame, I'll have it at a medium spot, and then next, push it back further. And he's landed on, whoops, on this leg. Okay? So in the first frame and last frame, I want to move these to a bit more of a medium spot as well. And I'll just copy and paste with Control-Alt-C and Control-Alt-V onto the first frame and last frame. And you'll notice how already the legs look a lot more like they're actually running and pushing him forward. Okay, so we're doing little tricks like this just to make the motion a bit more smooth. Something else we can do is lift the arm on this middle frame so that as his body and legs go down, his arms stay up. Same here on this other middle frame. It just kind of helps warp against that gravity to show us sort of counterbalancing. And really, we don't need to do much more than that. Okay. The other thing we can do, first of all, I'm going to pull these out a bit because I think the motion's a little too fast. So I'm just going to pull it out. I don't need my reference layer anymore, so I'm just going to delete that since I've got it pretty much where I'm happy with it. I want to make sure everything's spaced apart properly, and then instead of having it stop on the same frame as it starts, I'm going to hit F6 on the frame just before the end on all these frames, click and drag them to the very end. And that way, the very last frame and the first frame are slightly different. Otherwise, it would have had two frames that were exactly the same in the loop. We see we have a bit of a better pace now, and we have a slightly better length and a better motion. So what we can do is do some easing. So in this first section, I'm going to select all of this, and over here on the left in the properties panel, I'm going to ease it in by -50. And what that means is that it works into the motion and exponentially increases in speed in that tween. And then here in that section, I'm just going to go 50, which will ease out 50. And that just gives a little bit more bounce to the bounce. So -50 for the first half, 50 for the second half. Now when I loop that, I'm going to select here to this loop section, and now you can see him looping, and it's quite smooth and quite easy. One thing I do want to do is, as we see it looping, we can see things we want to fix, and I want to fix this arm because there's this one piece of shadow that looks like it's kind of chopping into the body. So I'm just simply going to go into this clip. I'm going to use my lasso and just select this area and make sure it's the same color as the rest of the shoulder. Just change the color. That just means that it's not really cutting into it. I actually want to do so for more of it. I'll erase a bit of that. So quite simply, I can edit a whole bunch of that without mucking around with too much. Whoops, I've just misplaced the timeline. Go back there. Okay, the other thing I want to do is, it looks a bit flat here, so I'm just going to add a little more depth. I'll add a layer on top so I don't have to edit anything that I've already drawn. I'm just going to add these little lines just to show where the shoulder muscles sort of divide. I'm just going to add a little bit of shade just to show that there's a bit of depth to the muscles. So now when I play that, the loop is much smoother and there's a bit more depth to this character's musculature anatomy. So now that I've got the torso animation and I've got the head animation, I want to put them together. And this is where it gets a little tricky because they both have different motions and different ways they move around and stuff. So this one,
I like that pic you looking.
is perfectly still but animated in a fairly intricate way. And this one has a constant bounce and is on a loop. I'm going to select both of these. I'm going to hit F8. I'm going to first I'll move the head over the body. Doesn't matter that it's overlaid. I'm going to hit F8 and I'm going to call this douche. Hit enter. So this is the full douche clip. I'm going to copy the head and delete it, and on a frame above I'm going to paste the head, resize it, and then we have this douche's head. Okay, now if I click and drag the timeline out, first I want to look at the head, 165, to see how far out I should drag the timeline. So now I'm going to just go out to frame 165, hit F5, and now I know how far it should go out. That way we can see both animations play out, but you can see how they have independent motion. So the body is bouncing and the head is not. Now, in a way, this is simple because all it means we have to do is animate the head, but the problem is we're reanimating the head because we can't put it on a loop the same way that we have a body on a loop. So a graphic will play through on the main timeline, but if it doesn't have room, say on the first frame where it's a graphic, I can't hit enter and play it. And if I control enter, it's perfectly still. So with one frame of animation, not that it has to be on one frame of animation, but I'm going to make it so it will work on one frame of animation in the main timeline. I'm going to delete this character here. I'll find him in the timeline. See him here, his douche. I'm going to right click and go properties, and I'm going to turn it from a graphic to a movie clip. Now when I copy and paste it, or click and drag it, I should say, onto the main timeline and hit Control Enter to test, we can see everything's animated. Okay, so now my job is to go in here and sync up the motions. Now, like I said before, the graphics will play out, but the movie clips won't unless it's in the full final animation. It won't in the timeline in the program. Okay, so this might be quite confusing. It is confusing to explain and understand early on, but basically the difference between a movie clip and a graphic is that a graphic will play in the main timeline, but only with the amount of timeline space it has. And if it has no frames of motion, it won't move. With a movie clip, it will move constantly with whatever timeline space it has within itself, but only once you've finally rendered it. So what I can do here is I want to have this head copy the motion of the body, but I don't want to have to create 160 frames of custom tweens to match this exactly while having it play out as a graphic, because it will mess up the animation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to delete the head. I'm going to find it in my library, here it is, douche head, and I'm going to change it to a movie clip. And then I'm going to click and drag it onto this internal timeline. Okay, so when I hit play now, in this timeline, the face doesn't animate, it won't move because it's a movie clip, but when I hit Control Enter, it does animate.
I like that pic, you look
okay. So what that means is that I can do tweens and move this all around and change the keyframes of the tweens and all that stuff without affecting the animation. It's still going to play out as normal. The advantage of this is I can find out that I have 25 frames of animation in the body. So I'll hit F6 here, and I'm just going to match up the animation between the head and the body. Okay, so I'm going to tween, I'm going to have the head go bop down, bop down. So now I've got a bit of a bounce on the head as well. And now that I've got a head bounce that matches the animation of the body, I'm going to copy these frames. So I'm going to select all these 25 frames, hit Control Alt C, and then on every keyframe after each 25th keyframe, like this, I'm going to hit Control Alt V. And that means I can have that motion match exactly all the way through. And even though the animation doesn't play out, the magic of it is when I render it, it will work. The problem is it's pushed out the timeline quite a bit, so I can just hit Control Alt C on that one frame and then select this whole ending bit, Control Alt V, and there you go. It's pulled the timeline back. And now when I hit Control Enter, you can see it playing out with the animation and the motion. Now, I'm not completely happy with how it lines up. I feel like the head's a little too low. So instead of moving each head frame, all I have to do is grab the body and move it down. And I can resize the body if I want. And now when I test it, I'm much happier with how that plays out. Hit Control Enter, and you can see that the motion matches. I can scale the size of the body, and it won't really affect anything because the animation is all internal. Okay, and in reality, when I go out to the main timeline, I have one frame. That's all. So it's a movie clip, but even though it's one frame, because it's a movie clip, it will play out in its entirety. And with the head, even though it's animated and it won't play out in the main timeline because it's a movie clip, when I render it,
I like that pic, you look
it works.
Thick.
Now, the other thing you'll notice is that if the head were a graphic, its audio wouldn't play when I rendered it or in the main timeline. But because it's a movie clip and it's inside a movie clip, the audio plays as normal. So even though it's one frame of no audio in this animation in the main timeline, inside the head the audio will play because it's a movie clip. So I know this has been kind of confusing, but it's a bit of an introduction as to how you can kind of mix motions of several clips without messing with the animation of a graphic by using it as a movie clip and having the motions match. It's a bit complicated. I hope you understand it. If you have any questions, make sure to leave them in the description, and I or someone else in the comment section can help you. That has been our tutorial on animating this character from start to finish. We've set him up from some very simple reference files and created a full animated body and character. And stay tuned next week, because I'm going to be doing a very cool pose to pose, frame by frame animation tutorial. Thank you for joining me, ladies and gentlemen, and until next time, I will see you later.